My name's Lewis. I'm 32 and living in Columbus, Ohio. I work construction now. Used to fix phones for a few years before that. Construction's tough, long hours, sore back, but it pays better. Enough for a small apartment near downtown, so I'm not complaining. We were working on a new apartment complex up in North Columbus. That day, I was the last one to leave the site. As I passed this narrow alley, something caught my eye. A little flash of light. Turned out to be a phone, half buried under a bunch of fallen leaves. I looked around. No one in sight. The phone looked pretty new. Not a single scratch. Must have been dropped not long ago. I stood there for a second, thinking. Then I picked it up. Figured I'd turn it into the cops, or maybe reach out to the owner. But not right then. I was dead tired. Just wanted to get home and crash. So I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket and kept walking. That night, after a quick shower and a simple dinner, I flopped down on the couch and turned on the TV. Then I remembered the phone. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it out and hit the power button. The screen lit up, and I froze. The wallpaper was a selfie of some guy, maybe mid-30s. Gaunt face, creepy-ass smile. But what really messed me up was what was next to him. A severed human hand, laid out on a white cloth like it belonged there. I just sat there, staring. My heart was pounding. I kept looking. His face, the fingers, the skin on that hand. Maybe it was just some creepy Halloween pic the guy used as a joke. Photoshop or something. I tried to calm myself down, but the hand, it looked too real. The wrist was jagged, not clean, like it had been ripped more than cut. There were bruises too, dark, patchy, random. The phone asked for a passcode. I felt I needed to know what the hell this was. I messed around with a few tricks I knew. Took a couple tries, but I got past the lock screen. First thing I did was open the contacts. Thought maybe I could find the owner's info. Weirdly, there were only 2 numbers saved, one under M and the other under D. So I checked the messages. Most of them were short, just back and forths between the owner and M, but the language was off. They kept using these creepy phrases I didn't recognize. Stuff like trading location and fresh goods. I opened the photo gallery, and that's when the nightmare really started. There were albums, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all neat, all labeled. The first one was titled Samantha W., March 2nd. The first photo, a young woman. She was tied to a wooden chair in some dark-ass room. Her face was frozen with fear. Next shot, same girl. But now she had bruises on her face, her lips split open, duct tape over her mouth, eyes nearly swollen shut, and it kept going. Each photo worse than the last. Until there she was. Eyes empty, body broken beyond recognition. I slapped a hand over my mouth, trying to choke back the nausea crawling up my throat. But it wasn't over. Not even close. The next shots, the guy in black rubber gloves, holding a scalpel. Every movement looked planned. Blood, bright red, splattered against a white backdrop. Body parts laid out neatly on a plastic sheet. My stomach clenched so hard. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the phone. But I couldn't stop. I kept doing the dumbest thing possible. I opened the next album. Thomas B., May 21st. Same setup. Middle-aged guy this time. Next album. Jennifer L., July 14th. A blonde woman. Then, unknown male, September 30th. No name. Just a guy around 30. By then, cold sweat had soaked through the back of my shirt. My chest was heaving like I'd just sprinted a mile. It felt like I was trapped inside someone else's nightmare, and there was no waking up. Then I hit the bottom of the last album, and somehow it got even worse. The man from the lock screen was there. Next to him was a woman with bright red hair, smiling sweetly. Standing in a clean, modern kitchen, wearing an apron, they looked like a totally normal couple making dinner. Except the ingredients laid out on the table, they were exactly what I'd just seen. The woman was seasoning a pot of stew like she was on a cooking show, while the man was casually slicing meat on a cutting board. And the last photo? They were sitting at a dinner table, plates full, glasses of red wine raised like it was some fancy-ass celebration. The nausea finally hit full force. I dropped the phone on the couch, stumbled into the bathroom, hit the floor in front of the toilet. My whole body was shaking like I was freezing. Once I pulled myself together, I checked the call log. There were a bunch of calls, both incoming and outgoing, between the owner and M&D. The most recent one? Just a few hours ago. I opened the Notes app and found a list. At first glance, it looked like a regular shopping list. But when I actually read it, my blood ran cold. It was a list of names and addresses. And the first 4 names? Crossed out. Every single one matched the victims from the photo albums. The 5th one stopped me cold. Karen H. With a date marked for tomorrow and an address in South Columbus. They were planning another kill, and it was set to happen in less than 24 hours. Suddenly the phone buzzed. In my hand, I damn near dropped it. A text from M flashed on the screen. Please contact me if you find my phone. I froze. They knew it was gone. They were trying to get it back. I shut the phone off immediately. Then I checked every door and window in my apartment, locked and bolted everything. But this creeping feeling wouldn't go away. Did they know who picked it up? Had they seen me in the alley? I called the cops, told them everything, handed the phone over as evidence. They honored my request to stay anonymous. Didn't take long before they helped me relocate. A nationwide warrant went out for the killers. Turns out their names were Michael and Margaret Warren. I kept up with the news and saw that they managed to save Karen H., the next name on the list. I've started a new life since then, but after everything, one truth stuck with me. Sometimes curiosity can accidentally save a life, but the price? It's losing a part of your soul you can never get back, the part that used to be innocent. And once it's gone for good.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community. Let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
I am 27 years old now. I used to be a YouTuber who specialized in horror content and creepy internet mysteries. For years, I was proud of my courage. I loved digging into the dark corners that most people were too afraid to explore. I didn't even hesitate to browse the dark web just to find the most authentic material for my videos. However, every game has a boundary that you should never cross. Unfortunately, I crossed it. It all started on a cold night in October. I stumbled upon an onion link that led to a website called The Shoeman. The interface was very simple. It looked like an old online shoe store from the 1990s. But the strange part was how they named their products. There were no famous brands like Nike or Adidas. Instead, there were only used shoes tagged with specific names, ages, and foot sizes. For example, one item named Pig, 20 years old, size 12, was a pair of beat-up sneakers priced at $187.30. Another product was S, 25 years old, size 9, which was just a pair of dirty flip-flops listed for an insane price of $160. The prices were crazy, but what really gave me chills were the faint red stains on the surface of the shoes. They looked exactly like blood that had dried a long time ago. My logic told me to close the tab immediately, but my deadly curiosity stopped me from leaving. In a moment of arrogance, I decided to get material for a new video. I clicked on a pair of old leather boots. When, 29 years old, size 13. Another surprise happened when I reached the checkout page. The website did not allow customers to buy the items outright. They only offered rentals for periods of 1 to 10 years. I hesitated for a moment, but I eventually chose a 1-year rental. I paid using cryptocurrency to keep my identity a secret. Exactly 1 week later, a package arrived at my front door. Inside the box was a pair of heavy leather boots. They showed clear signs of being heavily used. There was also an old VHS tape inside. I immediately started inspecting the boots using a UV light and luminol solution. These were standard tools I used for my mystery videos. My heart sank when the tests confirmed the truth. The red stains on those boots were definitely human blood. Next, I played the VHS tape. The screen showed the words, "The Shoe Man," in a haunting font. Then, a woman appeared. She was sitting in a pitch-black room with a single light shining on her pale face. She stared directly into the camera lens. She spoke slowly and told me that I must not lose or destroy the shoes. She said they would be collected once the rental period ended. The tape continued with specific instructions. It required me to film myself wearing the boots and upload the footage to a mysterious system. If I didn't do it, or if the video wasn't good enough, the consequences would be extremely severe. The video ended with a threatening message. The game has officially begun. I realized I had fallen into a trap much more dangerous than I ever imagined. My curiosity turned into pure terror. I decided to rip up the inner lining of the boots. Inside, I found a tiny GPS tracking device and an active SIM card. I put the SIM card into a burner phone to check it. I saw a signal and realized location data was being sent constantly to a strange phone number. They were tracking my every move, every minute of the day. In a panic, I tried to call that mysterious number. At first, there was only mechanical noise, but then a real person picked up. A man with a deep, raspy voice repeated that the game had started. Then he hung up. I sat frozen in my room. I thought about throwing the shoes away immediately, but the cold warning from the tape kept echoing in my head. I was too afraid to do anything reckless. A week passed. I tried to ignore the boots, but then another package arrived, even though I hadn't ordered anything else. Inside this box was another pair of shoes. These were soaking wet and smelled like rotting meat and strong blood. There was another VHS tape and an old-fashioned cell phone. I checked the phone and found only one contact saved under the name A. I took a risk and called it. Suddenly, the burner phone I had used before started ringing in my hand. I was terrified. I tremblingly played the second VHS tape. The content wasn't just for me to see. This video had been automatically posted publicly on my own YouTube channel. In the video, I was sitting there, looking thin and haggard. My eyes were full of panic. My voice was weak as I begged my followers to understand that this would be my last appearance. The most horrifying part? I had absolutely no memory of filming that video, but the person on the screen was definitely me. I was too scared to stay. I decided to delete my entire YouTube channel, all my emails, and my social media accounts. I wanted to cut all ties to the digital world. I threw away all my electronics and quietly moved back into my parents' house. I didn't give them any explanation for why I suddenly showed up. My parents were very worried because I had lost so much weight and looked like a ghost. I am sharing this story as a warning. There are corners of the internet that are not meant for us. There are some games that you should absolutely never try to play. This story is inspired by the real-life account of Shiloh Hill. Hill was an American youth who explored the dark web and accidentally accessed the Schumann website. After renting a strange pair of boots, he found bloodstains and received threatening VHS tapes. Hill was sucked into a terrifying game of stalking and manipulation before eventually disappearing from the internet entirely. In 2014, when I was 11 years old, my family had just moved from Tennessee to Texas, staying at my aunt's house for the first few days. Everything was fine, a large but very harmonious and happy family. That day, the adults in the house had plans to go out for dinner and repeatedly told us not to go outside. My aunt even added seriously that there had been some strange happenings recently, and my older sister and I were responsible for watching over the younger ones, ideally staying inside. We nodded, promising we wouldn't go anywhere, but of course, we were lying. As soon as the adults left, I persuaded my 17-year-old sister Kiva, along with my younger sister and cousin Peyton, to sneak out and buy snacks. At first, the plan was just to buy Ben & Jerry's ice cream, but on the way, Jack in the Box suddenly seemed like a more appealing choice. We turned on Bruno Mars and Meghan Trainor music, laughing and chatting the whole way. None of us knew that this night would haunt us forever. When we arrived, the drive-thru was packed, so we decided to go inside the store to order, and that was a mistake. Inside, the store was nearly empty, with only the cashier and a girl there, so she became the only focus of our attention at the time. The girl was quite petite, wearing a thick jacket even though the weather was already transitioning into summer. She walked up to the counter and ordered just one Sprite, but when the cashier handed it to her, she didn't drink it right away. Instead, she held it up close to her eyes as though inspecting something inside. Then, she placed it back on the counter, dipped her finger into the cup, stirred it slowly, and then brought her finger to her mouth, licking it while keeping her eyes wide open, staring intensely at the cashier. We couldn't take our eyes off the scene, but the real horror began when she suddenly turned around. We froze when facing her gaze. Her eyes were unnaturally wide, not blinking at all. I instinctively grabbed Peyton's and my younger sister's arms. "What the hell is that?" Peyton muttered. None of us reacted further as she turned and walked out of the door. "Oh my God, she's holding a knife!" Peyton exclaimed. We didn't know what to do, looking at the cashier. He was also stunned, still seemingly trapped by that haunting stare. My sister went up to order food, since we were there already, while the rest of us stood by the glass door watching. The girl was crossing the street, not running, not in a hurry, and not looking left or right. A car slammed on the brakes, honking loudly, nearly hitting her, but she didn't stop, not even reacting. We looked at each other. "Let's go," my sister whispered. As we were leaving Jack in the Box, I looked across the street. She had gone into CVS. We planned to call it a night and drive home to enjoy our snacks. But just then, police sirens blared. We sat in the car, holding our breath, watching closely. Around 4 police cars rushed into the CVS parking lot, their lights flashing red all down the street. One officer pulled out his gun and entered. Our curiosity kept us from leaving, so we drove closer to listen to what was happening. As we entered the parking lot, one officer stopped our car. "What are you kids doing here?" I was speechless, but Peyton quickly responded. "We were just at Jack in the Box across the street and saw a girl with a knife go into here." The officer quickly spoke into his radio. He looked back at us, frowning. "You kids should go home." We nodded and quickly drove off. When we got home, we thought everything was over. But no. As the family was getting ready for bed, my mom called us down to the living room. "Your dad and I want to know, what did you all do tonight?" We looked at each other, embarrassed, about to make up a story to avoid trouble, but it was pointless. Our parents already knew everything. A Facebook post had called our dad hero girls for providing important information about the girl with the knife. Heroes? Not at all. We were just curious. Then my mom told us the chilling truth. The girl had gone into CVS, grabbed a woman's hair, pressed the knife to her neck, and threatened her for several minutes before the police could restrain her. No one was hurt, but if we hadn't been lucky, the woman she threatened could have been one of us. It seemed like the story had ended, but a few days later, Peyton received a message from an unknown number. "What did you see?" We looked at each other, hearts pounding. That entire night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining her eyes wide, as if she didn't belong to this world. I never went back to that Jack in the Box again. I've always loved the autumn days in Maine, when the air turns crisp, the leaves turn brilliant yellow, and the scent of my grandmother's apple pie fills the small kitchen. That week, my parents were on a business trip, so I was sent to stay with my grandmother. Her wooden house was nestled in the woods, cozy but full of mysterious corners. Grandma, with her neat gray hair tied up and kind eyes, was strict but full of love. She had certain rules, and one of them was to never go near the abandoned house a few hundred meters away. "That house is unsafe," she would say, but I heard it more like an invitation to explore. That afternoon, while Grandma was busy baking, I sneaked outside. The low fence was the only thing separating me from the secret on the other side. I climbed over it and followed the trail that led into the woods, the yellow leaves crunching under each step. The abandoned house appeared before me. The roof collapsed in one corner, the windows shattered, and a crooked wooden sign on the grass with the faded words, "No entry from years past." I tiptoed up the steps, the wooden door creaking when I pushed it open. Inside, everything was covered in dust and cobwebs. Faint light from gaps in the walls illuminated the decaying furniture. I stepped cautiously, the wooden floor creaking beneath me. A chill ran down my spine as I heard small footsteps echoing from somewhere. I stopped and listened. The noise ceased, leaving only the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. A trail of muddy footprints on the floor led to the basement door, slightly ajar. I couldn't resist my curiosity. I pushed the door open and saw a wooden staircase leading down into the darkness. Taking the small flashlight I always carried in my pocket, I descended step by step. The smell of mold was overpowering, mixed with the nauseating stench of decay. Under the beam of the flashlight, I saw old wooden boxes piled with dust. The cold, silent space seemed to swallow every sound. The basement door slammed shut behind me, the dry thud echoing, freezing my whole body. My heart raced, its thumping reverberating in the tight, cold space. I stood frozen for a few seconds before rushing up the stairs, my trembling hand gripping the rotting handrail, the rough wood scraping against my skin. "Open the door!" I shouted, my voice bouncing back in the pitch blackness. I pounded on the door, each strike sounding hollow, almost mocking me. Fear began to spread. I clawed at the door, my nails breaking slightly from the force. "Please, please," I choked out, but only the echo of my own voice responded. When I could no longer muster the strength to pound, I slowly sank down onto the stairs. I curled up, hugging my chest. Cold sweat trickled down my face, mixing with the dust on my forehead and cheeks, but I didn't bother to wipe it away. My breaths grew short and hurried, as though the air in the basement was slowly being drained. Below, the flashlight flickered, and I heard rustling. A swarm of rats appeared from a corner of the room, their eyes glowing in the light, creeping toward me. I scrambled to find a safe corner, climbing onto an old wooden table to avoid the rats. The cold wood of the table felt like ice against me, and I sat there, curled up, trying to hold back my sobs. In that cold, dark silence, it felt like time had stopped. I thought of my grandmother, of the warm kitchen, and the scent of apple pie. I wished I had never stepped into that abandoned house, had never ignored my grandmother's warning. But now, everything was just fear and enveloping darkness. The next morning, I heard a call from above. "Billy, where are you?" Her voice made me burst into tears. Grandma opened the basement door, light from above spilling down. When she pulled me up, I saw her shaking. Her wrinkled hands wiped the dirt off my face, not saying a word of reproach. But her gaze was enough for me to understand that I had made a mistake. Before leaving, I glanced at the basement one last time. Through the broken window, I caught a glimpse of a figure passing by. I never told her about it, never asked about the shadow or mentioned that terrible night again. But every time I think back, the cold feeling in the basement still haunts me. I realize that sometimes curiosity can lead to consequences we never expect. My name is Donnie. 5 years ago, when I was in college, I was fascinated by the deep web because of its absolute freedom and lack of censorship. Back then, accessing this underground world was becoming a trend at my school. Even though I had heard many horror stories about hackers and dark websites, I saw my friends using it normally, so I decided to give it a try. I asked a friend from my nerd circle to set it up for me. Since I didn't intend to do anything illegal, my friend said I didn't need high-level security software like Tails. Just changing my IP address would be enough. He warned me to always keep the hidden wiki on censored mode to avoid seeing things I shouldn't. The first 2 weeks were quite boring. I wandered around the hidden wiki, read some banned articles, or joined strange philosophy forums. I started to get cocky, thinking of myself as a true citizen of the dark web. One night, driven by a sick curiosity, I decided to go deeper into the dark sites. I turned off the censorship mode and started hunting for links. Eventually, I landed on a website called All the Gore. It was an incredibly massive chat room with a user list that seemed to go on forever. Topics flashed by like a news ticker, but after a few minutes, I realized what I was looking at wasn't normal conversation. The discussion thread titles made my blood run cold. Human hunting games, screams in the basement, cleaning the scene yourself. At first, I even laughed, thinking it was just a bunch of teenagers doing horror roleplay. That was until I read a post by someone named Culture. He began to recount details meticulously, like he was bragging about a trophy, from how he broke into a suburban home, hearing the gasps of a couple hiding under the bed, to the feeling of satisfaction when he landed the first knife strike. I don't know why I kept reading, but I read the whole thing. He claimed he had murdered the couple and kidnapped their daughter. I still didn't want to believe it, but then I scrolled down and saw a photo he had attached. It was a selfie, I think. He wore a plain, expressionless white mask. One hand held a little girl who was sobbing in total panic, and behind them were two bodies sprawled on the floor. He looked straight into the lens, his smile as joyful as if he had just finished a masterpiece. I immediately backed away from the computer. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. It was disgusting. In a blind fit of keyboard warrior rage, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I typed into the chat box, "You sick freaks. I took a screenshot. The police will find you and shut this trash heap down." Immediately the screen went pitch black. A green dialog box appeared. The username shown was admin. He typed, "Call the police and you will regret it." I reached for my phone, but as soon as I touched the screen, a message from a blank number popped up. "Call the police and you're dead." I froze. When I looked back at my laptop, I realized with a shock that the webcam light was on. I hadn't noticed when it started. My whole body went cold. Sweat began to pour even though the AC was on. On the screen, a photo appeared. It was me, sitting there holding my phone with a pale face. Someone was watching me right that second. In a panic, I covered the webcam with my hand. The screen quickly showed the next message from admin. Put the phone down and uncover your webcam. I kept it covered. He typed, "Fine, have it your way." Then he leaked everything, my name, my address, and my exact dorm room. It would be a shame if Donnie and your college friends disappeared, wouldn't it? I didn't listen to him. I grabbed the laptop, rushed to my best friend's room on the same floor, and used his phone to call the police. When the police arrived, the website had vanished like a ghost. They seized my laptop, but found nothing except some junk files. They advised me to move temporarily. I stayed at the home of a friend named David. I taped over every camera, changed all my passwords, and lived in a state of extreme caution. Even though I tried to forget, I lived in constant fear and confusion. I taped over all the cameras on my phone and computer, but every time I used them, I still felt like someone was watching me. One afternoon, I returned to the apartment. David was at class. Just as I lay down on the bed, I heard a small noise. I held my breath and listened. Then another click, clearer this time, coming from the closet. I sat up fast, staring at the closet door that was slightly ajar. A second later, the closet door swung open. A man in a white mask stepped out and walked toward me. I didn't scream or think. I immediately turned and ran. I bolted down the stairs, out of the building, jumped in my car, and drove away in a total panic. When I returned later with the police, the man was gone. They did a quick check and left, telling me to rest, change my passwords, and lock my doors carefully. But when I returned to the bedroom, the computer turned on automatically. The wallpaper had been changed to a photo of a person wearing a mask, identical to the one I saw in the closet. He held a knife and pointed it forward. Next, a live stream software started up automatically. I couldn't close it no matter how hard I tried. The screen went black for a few seconds. Then a line of text appeared. "Welcome, Donnie." The live stream began. I saw a strange room. A dim light hit the face of a boy sitting in front of a screen, focused on something. Everything looked normal until the closet door behind him creaked open. A masked figure stepped out and approached. The boy turned around and was immediately attacked. My eyes were glued to the screen while my mouth unconsciously counted 11 times in total. It didn't stop there. He skillfully used other items like knives, scissors, and a chainsaw. In the chat box next to it, hundreds of people were cheering. Their comments were encouraging and praising, which made me nauseous. The live stream ended. In the chat box, Culture typed, "Thanks for watching, Donnie." I rushed into the bathroom and vomited violently. When I came back, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages from my parents, siblings, and friends. Everyone was asking why I sent them such a disgusting video. Those monsters had sent the live stream link to everyone in my contacts. My family thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was a pervert. My life was almost ruined in a few minutes. The police were called again. This time, they finally saw the severity of the case. They found a volume of strange data still sending signals from my seized computer. After weeks of investigation, the police finally announced the results. 4 men were arrested in a federal sweep, but they weren't the ones in the video. They were the ones who had cheered, donated money, and placed bets on each live stream. I read the news on my phone, not knowing if I should feel relieved or hopeless. The All the Gore site disappeared, but admin and culture were never found. No one can say for sure that it was ever truly deleted. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about the boy in the live stream, the face of the little girl in culture's photos, and all the other victims I don't know. And I wonder how many people out there are still accessing those sites. Finally, I want to advise you. If you have any intention of going on the deep web, stop right now. Don't be curious about what is hidden in the shadows, because once they see you, they will never forget. And some night, when you are sitting alone in your room, you will hear a click in your closet. And by then, it's too late.
My name is Natalie. I'm 25 years old. I just moved to a budget apartment in San Antonio to save some money. Currently, I'm a journalist. There are days when I have to leave early and get home late, and sometimes I even end up staying overnight at a motel or hotel. I don't have much time for myself, and I haven't had a chance to clean and arrange the new apartment yet. One evening, I got home totally wiped out, my feet killing me from walking all day, and it was almost midnight. I hit the button for the 6th floor in the elevator. As soon as I got to the hallway near my apartment, I was surprised and took a step back when I saw a girl. She was standing in front of the door of apartment 131, right next to mine, and knocking. Her long white hair hanging down freaked me out a bit. The slow, drawn-out knocking felt really heavy and exhausting. I quickly walked past and went back to my apartment. After locking the door, I let out a sigh of relief, but I could still hear the knocking from apartment 131. I'd never met the person who lived in that apartment. I only knew a guy was living there. After a while, the knocking stopped. I got curious, opened the door, and looked out into the hallway, but there was no one around. Maybe that girl had gone into apartment 131 or left, but I didn't hear the door to apartment 131 open or any footsteps when she left. I didn't think much of it and just went back inside. Seeing the mess in front of me, I sighed in frustration. It was already past midnight, but I didn't have time to clean up. I had the whole day off tomorrow, so I figured I'd deal with it then. I started moving the furniture around in the apartment. While I was cleaning the living room, I jumped when I heard a loud noise from the apartment next door, like a gunshot. I froze for a few seconds, trying to decide if I should go out and see what was going on. I wasn't sure if the other people in the building heard the noise. I didn't see anyone react, and I didn't have the nerve to check it out by myself, so I decided to stay put. The next day I woke up at 10 and continued cleaning the apartment. When I swapped out the mattress and sheets on the bed, I found 3 $100 bills and 3 notes under the pillow. What was written on the notes was pretty strange. "I'll pay you 10 times if you take on one of my challenges, 131. Feeling pretty confused, I decided to hold on to the money in case the previous tenant came back to claim it. The apartment was mostly set, so I left the house early in the afternoon. I also got home pretty late the next night. When I walked into the hallway of the apartment, I ran into another weird girl. She was also standing at the door of apartment 131, knocking over and over, and she had long white hair too. That guy living in that apartment must be quite a playboy. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly from a loud noise, but I decided to just ignore it. Just think, with a cheap apartment like that, there were a ton of issues that people like me on a tight budget had to deal with. The next day, I got home late and didn't run into any other girls. When I walked into the apartment, I saw a $100 bill and a note on the floor. "I'll pay you 10 times more if you take on one of my challenges, 131. What was going on? I checked the spot where I'd put the $300 and the dollar bills the day before, and they were all still there. Looking at the last digit on the note, I opened the door and glanced over at the apartment next door. Could the number 131 on the note be the apartment number? I shut the door and tried calling the building manager, but I couldn't get through. Could it be that the girls who came to that apartment the past few days were also looking for the $100 bills and the note? I had a feeling that the owner of apartment 131 wasn't good, so I crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash. Of course, I kept the $100. The next day I got home early, and when I walked past apartment 131, the door was wide open. A bit curious, I peeked inside. There was just a dim purple light, and I couldn't see anything else. I stood in front of the apartment door for a long time, trying to see inside and debating with myself whether to go in or not. I took a few steps closer to the apartment door and was startled to see a figure standing there staring. I immediately ran away. Once I was sure I was safe back in my apartment, I looked up information about the building online. There was something off. The article mentioned that the building owner was a woman named Emily, but when I signed the lease, I remember it being a guy named Marcus. I couldn't find any information about an owner named Marcus. Emily, the owner, hadn't updated her personal page in over 2 months. Scrolling through Emily's pictures, I noticed she also had pretty long white hair. With my reporter's instinct, I could tell this building was hiding something weird, and I wanted to figure it out. It took me about half an hour to get ready and head over to the apartment next door. The door opened after I knocked 3 times. I quickly moved around to check out the whole apartment. In the kitchen, I saw a girl standing next to the refrigerator with her back to me. I called out to her a few times, but she didn't answer. As I moved closer, I noticed that her lower body was naked. I touched her shoulder and pulled her back. She fell to the floor, her face turned away, and I saw a bullet wound right in the middle of her forehead. I sat down, covering my mouth tightly to keep from making a sound. This was the girl I'd seen on the first night. When I turned around, I was shocked again. Another girl who looked similar was stuffed under the drawer. When I looked closer, I went limp, realizing that the apartment was full of female corpses. A nearly decomposed corpse in a dress, which had been cut to show her lower half, was propped up on the living room sofa. Feeling dizzy, I noticed a weird smell in the air. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but there was no signal. I rushed to the door, screaming and banging on it, hoping to get someone's attention. Suddenly, an arm reached out from behind and yanked my hair. He shoved me hard against the door, and with his other arm, tried to pull down my pants. I pulled out a mini dagger and struck his gross hand that was on my hip and still grabbing my hair. That crazy guy let go of me and screamed in pain. Outside, I heard a bunch of loud gunshots, and right after that, the apartment door swung open. The police quickly came in and arrested the guy. I asked the police for help when I started feeling dizzy and having trouble breathing. I woke up in the hospital room, due to the side effects of an overdose of propranolol. I woke up in the hospital because of an overdose of propranolol and its side effects. The guy in apartment 131 was Marcus, but the building owner wasn't him. It was Emily. She was the body that was almost completely decomposed. The other victims were people living in the building, and they all had one thing in common. They were single and had long white hair. The sicko Marcus got a life sentence without parole. The police rewarded me with a big chunk of money, and I ended up in the newspapers. I moved to a more comfortable and safer apartment. After that incident, I really grew to love my job even more and wanted to contribute even more. Anonymous posts on social media. Is it just a joke or something more serious? I'm a freelance programmer and I work online. One day I was scrolling through Facebook to chill after a few hours of work, and I stumbled on a post from some anonymous account. I just killed someone. What should I do now? It's a super short sentence, but it got a ton of reactions, including mine. I totally cracked up when I saw the post, and after checking out the comments, I realized the author really knows how to make an impact. I dropped a comment to get in on the joke. Go grab a knife like a really sharp good one. A bunch of people laughed at my comment. How cool, I said to myself and got back to work. That evening, I was in bed, messing around on my phone, when I got a notification saying someone replied to my comment. The OP replied to my comment. I got a knife like you said. What now? I shot back. Break it down like those Hannibal horror movies. And then, what do you do with them? Just wait for the garbage truck to roll up. Or maybe, enjoy it. I cracked up at my own comment. Everyone thought the man was just kidding. After that, I have no idea when I knocked out. The next day, I hung out with friends and didn't get back until late afternoon. Thinking about yesterday's post, I was curious and went to check it out. The author confirmed he wasn't joking. I did what you said, and the results blew my mind. I suddenly got a shiver. My mind flashed to a scary image of a dismembered body, and I realized I was basically consulting on how to pull off that crime. I closed the social media app, fired up my favorite music, and hopped in the shower. But it felt super weird. I didn't even know what I was feeling at that moment. My body was just really anxious and restless. I couldn't shake off that article, so I logged back in right after I finished showering. If you don't believe it, just check out the foot of the Mackinac Bridge. A black bag's gonna be there at 10 p.m. tonight. He also dropped a link to a map showing how to get to the Mackinac Bridge below the post. A lot of people were still laughing at that post, but I was kinda half believing it. The bridge was less than a mile from my place. I had been mentally struggling for like 4 hours. My mind was getting torn apart by curiosity, doubt, and fear. In the end, curiosity won out. I got up, changed my clothes, and bounced out of the house. When I got to the foot of the Mackinac Bridge, my heart started racing. I looked around, and sure enough, I spotted a black bag in the distance. The closer I got, the harder it was to breathe. But right then, my sense kicked in. My feet kept moving, even though fear was tightening up my chest. I reached out to open the black bag, and I started gasping. The thing inside started to show, but it was black and hard to make out. Something fell out from inside, and I jumped back, screaming like crazy. A piece of plastic, I shouted when I finally saw what it was. Inside the black bag was a bunch of scraps. I kicked the piece of plastic hard and turned to leave, feeling kinda ashamed and a bit bitter for letting some random person pull me along like that. When I got home, I quickly pulled up the article, ready to call out that scammer. But the article was gone. I muttered some curse words and went to bed feeling frustrated. A few days later, while I was browsing online, the anonymous account dropped a post. What to do with such a tall and fit body? This time, there was a video with the article. That was me, standing at the foot of the Mackinac Bridge that evening when I opened the black bag. So there was a camera in that bag. I reported it to the police right away, and while I was waiting for the investigation results, I ended up dropping almost 8 pounds. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep well, and couldn't concentrate on work. I had no idea what the account owner was going to pull next on me, or someone else. I wasn't sure if this was just a joke or if it was some crazy scheme. If it was just a prank, like that black bag at the foot of the bridge, then this jerk really knows how to freak people out.
Gavin stepped onto the bus with heavy legs. His shift had lasted longer than expected, and his body was exhausted, the smell of sweat mixed with the scent of machine oil clinging to his worn clothes. The worn heels of his shoes lightly touched the bus floor, making a creaking sound. He took a deep breath, letting the cold air seep into his chest. The bus at this late hour wasn't too crowded, just a few scattered people sitting here and there. Gavin walked straight to the last row of seats, his usual spot after each shift. He liked the quiet here, where no one bothered him, no one noticed him. Outside the window, New York City glowed brightly in the night. Tall buildings stood still, streetlights stretching across the empty streets. Gavin sighed, his mind blank. The work in the factory drained him day by day, but it was the only thing he had. Suddenly, a faint fragrance passed by, making Gavin furrow his brow. A light, sweet, and fresh perfume. A young woman boarded the bus, walking toward the row of seats in front of him. She had long, dark hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Her long coat hugged her small frame, and her high-heeled boots clicked softly on the bus floor with each step. When she sat down, her hair gently swayed. Gavin turned his face away, but his eyes couldn't help but sneak a glance at her. The woman took out her phone, her fingers swiftly scrolling across the screen. Then she laughed, a quiet laugh, but enough to grab his attention. He didn't know why he was curious. Maybe it was the silence of the late night, maybe the exhaustion that slowed his mind, or maybe it was just because he was used to observing people. He tried to keep his gaze on the bus window, but then, unable to resist, he secretly looked at the woman's phone screen. "I miss you so much. I can't wait any longer. Let's meet at our usual spot." Gavin blinked. A normal love message. He felt a little embarrassed for peeking. He was about to look away when another message appeared. "It is done. Just the cleanup left. This time, it has to be cleaned thoroughly. Leaving it too long will be troublesome." Gavin frowned, trying to make sense of the words. Maybe it was just casual talk, but then another message came up. "Everything is ready. Are you sure the place near the river will be safe?" Gavin clenched his fist. A chill ran down his spine. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't think of anything positive. He glanced at the woman again. She was still sitting there, as calm as if nothing special had happened. Her finger lightly touched the screen. Her lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Let's meet at 11 o'clock. Bring the necessary stuff." Gavin felt as if someone had punched him in the stomach. His whole body tensed. He felt his heart pounding faster, each beat echoing in his chest. Gavin looked away, taking a deep breath to calm himself. Unconsciously, Gavin made eye contact with the man sitting in the row in front of him. He was also watching the woman, it seemed. Gavin quickly looked away again, unable to hide his confusion. His mind was spinning with a flood of thoughts. Who was she talking about? What did "handle it" mean? A hit? A murder plot? The bus continued to roll through the empty streets. Outside, the streetlights were still shining, cars still passing by. But for Gavin, everything seemed blurry. The woman suddenly turned her head. Gavin jumped, his heart nearly stopping. But she only glanced out the window behind him before lowering her head to her phone again. He swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. But his body was as taut as a bowstring. The bus was approaching the next stop. Gavin didn't know where the woman would get off, nor what he should do. Should he report it to the police? Or was he just overthinking? The sound of the phone's messages being typed echoed, and Gavin couldn't shake the curiosity from his mind. He glanced at her phone one more time. There's a guy who's been staring at my phone. What should I do now? Gavin's whole body froze. A jolt of cold ran down his spine. His breath became heavy, his chest feeling as if something invisible was pressing down on him. The screen lit up again. A message from the woman's boyfriend just arrived. Deal with him right away. Gavin felt his stomach tighten. A wave of nausea hit him, but he couldn't move. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, his hands trembling as they gripped the edge of the seat, as if it was the only thing holding him in this nightmare. The air in the bus felt thick, everything moving slower, heavier. He wanted to turn his head, pretend he never saw anything, but his body was as stiff as a statue. At that moment, a soft sound came from the front of the bus. The man sitting in the front row stood up. He was tall, wearing a gray hoodie, hands stuffed in his pockets. He slowly walked toward Gavin, without any hurry, without any hesitation. Gavin tried to stay calm, but cold sweat had already started to bead on his forehead. He looked at the woman. She was still sitting there, but this time, her eyes were fixed on him. An amused look. She no longer giggled like before, but instead wore a vague, unreadable smile. The man came closer, then stopped, sitting down right next to Gavin. The space became suffocating. He slowly sat down. Gavin held his breath. A faint click sounded. The man took his hand out of his pocket. In his hand was a sharp object. A steel folding knife, its cold blade reflecting the dim light of the bus. He twirled the knife between his fingers, then tilted his head, looking at Gavin with a calm gaze. The woman in front was still looking at Gavin, her eyes gleaming, as if waiting for something interesting to happen. The bus kept moving through the night, but for Gavin, time seemed to stop.
This is not an urban legend, nor is it a fabricated story for views. It started as a harmless night of adventure in the woods, but it ended in a nightmare that I haven't escaped from even now. I am Toby, living in a small mountainous town in western Washington state. Winters here rarely have snow, but the sight of trees stripped bare of leaves with only dry branches sticking out is enough to show how harsh the weather is. When I was 14, my best friends and I built a small wooden shack on the hill behind the school. It wasn't big, with an old wooden floor and a tin roof. To us, it was a secret base, a place where we could do anything. One weekend evening, around the beginning of December, I told my parents I was staying overnight at Brian's house, my closest friend in the group, but actually, we had planned to sneak up to the shack to spend the night, calling it a winter adventure. Around 9 p.m., after setting off some mini flares near the trail by the shack, we started hearing very strange noises echoing from the small creek nearby. It sounded like something large splashing into the water, followed by continuous scratching and tearing sounds. It was chwalmangs, especially in the quiet, freezing space. We looked at each other. None of us spoke, but we all understood. It was time to leave. On our way down the hill, we ran into a middle-aged woman walking up from below. She carried a flashlight and a long stick, like a hoe handle. Her coat reached her knees, and her face was obscured by the flashlight's glare. She walked silently, almost gliding. At first, we were scared and about to run away. But then, I was the one who suggested we follow her. Simply put, curiosity won over everything else. I convinced the others that she was just a local looking for firewood or something. Who knows? Maybe she was looking for something valuable. Our excitement immediately returned. We secretly followed her for about 20 minutes, crossing bare thickets and a slope covered in rotten dry leaves. We reached a clearing in the woods where the wind howled louder. We huddled together, shivering. We watched as she stopped there, shining her flashlight onto the ground. Then she knelt down, took a hand-sized hammer from her backpack, and hammered nails repeatedly into something that looked like a photograph. As she hammered, she mumbled things that sounded like curses, a mix of whispers and grinding teeth. When the flashlight beam swept past the trees, I clearly saw the photo. It was black and white, the face of a child, seemingly a little girl. I recalled the legend we students used to tell. Someone in the woods behind the school once used photos or dolls to curse those they hated. We watched her silently until I made a mistake. I stepped on a dry branch that snapped under my foot. The woman immediately snapped her head up. The flashlight beam swept around, then hit my eyes directly. "Run!" Brian screamed, and we all scattered, but I wasn't fast enough. Fear completely paralyzed me. The woman screamed like a maniac and lunged straight toward me, still clutching the hammer as if she wanted to destroy me at any cost. The moment she closed in was when I snapped out of it, but it was too late to run. I fell backward, and she pressed down on me. Her foot stamped hard on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Her face was right next to mine, full of hate. Her mouth clenched so tight that blood oozed from the corners of her lips. Her breath reeked of something very strange, like dead animal carcasses or rotten moss. I thought I was going to die, but at that moment, a fierce growl echoed from the hillside, and two stray dogs rushed toward us. One was Rusty, the brown dog that used to come to our shack begging for food. Rusty bit the woman's leg. The other dog, which was black, bit her arm, making the hammer drop a few inches from me. I took the opportunity to jump up and run without looking back. I met up with my friends a short distance away. We didn't say a word, just gasped for breath and ran down the hill together. We circled back to Brian's house, as we had lied to our parents, snuck up to his room and locked the door tight. That night, none of us could sleep. The same question was echoing in everyone's mind. Who was she? The next morning, Brian and I, though scared out of our minds, risked going back to the scene. I knew if I didn't confront it, I wouldn't be able to sleep another night. When we returned to the clearing, we found a photo of a girl about 5 years old, her face full of fear. Dozens of Rusty nails were hammered into the photo. Next to it was Rusty's carcass with a severe head injury. Right nearby was the remaining black dog, one hind leg twisted, but still breathing. When I softly called it, it whined softly. I immediately felt a burning sensation in my nose. I felt sorry for Rusty and his friend. Brian took off his jacket, wrapped it around the dog, and carried it. I carried Rusty to the shack to bury him. At the shack, we saw a red drawstring bag belonging to one of our friends nailed directly to the roof of the shack, like a warning. Near the entrance, a crude wooden board was stuck into the ground, on which was scrawled the message, "Aaron, I will curse you." It was easy to understand, as the name Aaron was printed on his bag, but the scary thing was that the woman showed she would make us pay. Brian said we should call the police, but I couldn't. I had lied to my parents. If they found out I was sneaking into the woods at night, I would definitely be grounded all winter. We decided never to return to that hill again. We agreed that if we stayed away from the mountain for a while, she would forget about us. From that day on, we didn't see each other during the entire winter break and never saw the woman again. After the mountain incident, Brian started skipping school because he broke out in a rash all over his body, including a strange bruise on his right flank. It looked exactly like the face of the middle-aged woman who had attacked me. He insisted it was her curse, while Aaron and I tried to reassure him it was just a coincidence. At the same time, Rumors started circulating at school about a woman wearing sandals and a long trench coat who often appeared along the way home and stared at students. I was terrified, knowing for sure it was the woman from the woods. One afternoon, when Aaron and I were hanging out with two other friends, Nick and Mason, we unexpectedly ran into her on a quiet road leading out of town. She was looking down, carrying a grocery bag, but as we got closer, she suddenly looked up and stared straight at me. The smirk and lifeless eyes made Aaron and me panic and run, even though Nick and Mason scoffed, thinking she was just a crazy lady. That night, I couldn't sleep. Aaron and I discussed it and decided to return to our old base on the hill the next day to gather evidence, bringing a Polaroid camera. There, we found a new photo of a little girl nailed to the ground, so the cursing ritual was still ongoing. Under the old floorboards of the shack, we found a wooden plank with the words, "Curse Brian." I took pictures of everything with trembling hands. We immediately went to the local police station, but the officer on duty just asked, "Have you told your parents yet?" Clearly, they didn't believe us. The photos we brought were also blurry. Afraid of being reprimanded and having our parents informed, we ran away from the station. A few days later, as I was walking home alone, I felt like I was being followed. Turning back, I saw the middle-aged woman hiding behind a car, holding a long stick. I ran, weaving through small alleys to avoid being followed. When I got home, I had just locked the door when she was already on the porch. She tried to turn the doorknob, then pressed her ear against the door as if listening. I hid in the dark, holding my breath, but she didn't stop there. She pressed her face against the window and used a sharp object to scratch the glass, making a horrible screech sound. Just then, police car lights flashed. After that, I received a call from Aaron. He said he had called the police because he saw her outside my house. I had no choice but to tell my parents everything. When my dad checked the door, he found deep scratches. They were nail marks. The next morning, my mom let me stay home from school to calm down. Around noon, I suddenly heard my mom scream loudly downstairs. I quickly ran down and saw a strange object thrown against the wall, a purple liquid mixed with the open stomach of a frog. My mom frantically called the police. The police arrived, this time a different officer. They investigated the scene and took statements from my mom and me. Crying, I begged, "She's about 40, carrying a hoe. She's the one who cursed Brian. Please arrest her." The officer reassured me, saying they had checked the evidence and would try to catch the suspect as soon as possible. My dad came home early because he was worried. After 11 p.m., as the whole family was settling down to sleep, a furious scream erupted outside the door. I heard a man shouting, the woman howling hysterically, and a police voice. "Silence! Don't resist!" Dad rushed out while Mom held me tight in the bedroom. After a moment, the police called me out to confirm. By the door, 2 police officers were restraining the middle-aged woman, face down on the ground, hands tightly pinned, but her eyes were still staring fiercely at me. "Is she the one from the mountain?" the officer asked, and I could only nod, trembling. The police said they found her squatting in front of the door, trying to light something on fire with a lighter. In her paper bag was a carved wooden plank that read, "Toby, may you die," along with my full name. The investigation report stated that a year earlier, her husband and son died in a car accident after swerving to avoid a little girl who suddenly ran across the road. After that, she suffered a mental breakdown and began her acts of cursing and revenge. She was officially arrested after that incident. She is still currently incarcerated, but I worry that she will be released early due to her mental state. She will find us, and we will have to live in fear again. I am telling this story now that I am 30 years old. I hope that sharing this will finally bring me some peace, as I have kept it a secret for almost 20 years. Back then, my family seemed very happy. We lived in a 2-story house in Sacramento with a beautiful little yard. Everything was fine until I turned 11. That was when the nightmares started. Every single night, I would hear the sound of a woman crying in agony. Some nights, it was the sound of running footsteps or heavy thumping, followed by loud sobbing. Every time, I would wake up terrified and scream for my parents. They would both rush into my room immediately. Sometimes they would both stay and let me sleep between them. Other times, they would take turns. My parents told me they were just nightmares and that everything was okay. Aside from those night terrors, our lives seemed normal. Then, one afternoon, I came home from school to find 2 police cars parked in front of our house. The neighbors were standing in small groups, looking at our home with pity in their eyes. I ran inside, and my heart shattered when I saw my father. He was kneeling at the bottom of the stairs, sobbing. Next to him was a body lying motionless on the floor, covered by a white sheet. There was a lot of blood on the hardwood. I looked around, but I couldn't find my mother. I started crying and running through the house calling for her. My dad pulled me back and held me tight. He sobbed as he explained that my mom had fallen down the stairs and would never wake up again. I could only choke on my tears. The person under that sheet was my mother. I wanted to go to her and see her one last time, but my father wouldn't let me. My mother's funeral happened shortly after. My dad and I cried until we had nothing left. After that, our house felt like it was buried in darkness. My father became a completely different person. He spent almost all his time drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He stopped going to work and just sat in the living room, staring into space. But there was one strange thing. He was always clutching a light gray umbrella, the one my mother used when she was alive. I had to learn how to take care of myself and handle all the chores. I remember that my nightmares stopped, but I would still wake up with a start because of the sound of breaking glass whenever my dad was drunk. I missed my mom's cooking so much. I wished more than anything that she was still alive and here with us. One weekend, my dad was passed out drunk on the sofa while I was watching TV in the living room. It started to rain outside, and my dad suddenly bolted upright, looking incredibly excited. He stumbled over, grabbed the gray umbrella, and rushed out into the yard. I called out to him, but he didn't listen. In the middle of the pouring rain, my father started to dance. His movements were strangely graceful and fluid. He held the umbrella as if he were embracing an invisible person, looking up at the fabric with pure devotion. For the first time since my mom died, I saw my father smile. I ran out and tried to pull him back inside. He pushed me away, his eyes fixed on the umbrella. He kept dancing like that for hours. I stood there watching, feeling a mix of fear and confusion. When the rain finally stopped and evening fell, he finally came inside. He carefully wiped down the umbrella and went back to clutching it. The next day, it rained again. My father went back to the yard and danced for hours with that umbrella. After this happened several times, I realized it wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a strange, haunting obsession that he couldn't control. I became curious about that umbrella. What was it about it that made my father act this way? One time, I asked if I could use the umbrella. My father immediately flew into a rage and screamed at me, "Don't you ever touch it." He looked straight into my eyes and emphasized every single word. But an 11-year-old's curiosity is hard to suppress. One day, my dad drank too much and fell into a deep sleep on the sofa. His grip on the umbrella loosened. I crept toward him, quickly pulled the umbrella from his hand, and ran straight to the backyard. It wasn't raining that day. The sun was shining brightly. I stood in the middle of the yard holding the umbrella, my heart pounding. I had to know why my father loved this thing so much. I looked at the outside first. It was just a normal umbrella, and it was actually getting pretty old. I opened it up and looked at the inside. The bright sunlight shone through the fabric. I noticed that the inner lining looked a bit strange. At first, I thought it was just a special waterproof coating, but as I looked closer, my heart started racing. I saw strands of hair, then a forehead, and the bridge of a nose. It was like a magnet pulling me in. I stared even closer. The more I looked, the more familiar it became, and my hands began to shake. There was a mouth pulled into a distorted shape, and the eyes, they were wide open, looking right at me. I threw the umbrella onto the ground, screamed, and collapsed. My whole body wouldn't stop shaking, and I was gasping for air. I couldn't take my eyes off it. There was no mistake. It was my mother's face. I scrambled up, intending to go wake my father, but I was terrified he would be furious that I had stolen the umbrella. And yet, I wanted to scream at him and ask why my mother's face was inside of it. I lost all my strength and slumped down by the door, crying. I kept looking at the umbrella, then back at my sleeping father inside. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, I was able to move. I made a choice. With shaking hands, I picked up the umbrella, trying my best not to look at the inside. I folded it up neatly, put it back in its spot next to my father, and quietly went to my room. I didn't sleep for many nights after that. My mental health went downhill, and I lost a lot of weight. 2 months later, I was sent to live with my grandmother in Oregon because the state ruled that my father was unfit to care for me. He was committed to a mental hospital, and I never saw him again. I developed severe psychological issues. I became completely withdrawn and never told anyone what I had seen. Even now, I am still trying to overcome that trauma. Looking back at age 30, I realized those nightmares I had at age 11 were all real. The crying was my mother. The footsteps were her trying to run away from my father. Her death wasn't an accident. I believe my father pushed her down those stairs. Maybe it was an accident in the heat of the moment, because I could feel how much he suffered afterward, and the way he cherished that umbrella with her face on it. I think he missed her terribly too. I don't know the full story of what happened that night. Honestly, I don't want to know anymore. I just hope my mother is finally at peace. And I hope that no other child ever has to go through what I did.